Welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skill. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Don Grant.
Okay, folks, welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, and make sure you follow us so that you can stay tuned to all the new podcasts that come out. I do like to focus on some of the mental stuff here, more like a lifestyle, get to know people type of podcast. So I appreciate you all liking my style and what I've been bringing to the industry as far as that's concerned. So thanks for tuning in. I am excited to have Michael Boire. But Michael and I just met in person at the last Jack Links and super impressed by what all you guys are doing down there, but also with you as a quality, genuine, kind person, which, you know, it's one of those things that I think probably a lot of people notice when they meet you or get to know you. So thanks for being here, Michael.
Yeah, well, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on. Yeah,
for sure. Well, just give a little bit of highlights because we're going to dive in deeper, but I think it's good up front to kind of highlight, who is Michael?
Yeah, so I've, been in this industry for, about 15 years now. I started out shooting, but started kind of dabbling and working in the industry and figured out that I love it and been pretty successful at it. So now I'm here at general manager at Quail Creek Sporting Ranch. Me and my family live on site, and, it's a wonderful place, and we're excited about the future.
Nice. I didn't realize 15 years. So you and I have been in the industry about the same amount of time. I think I started around 2008.
Okay.
So a little bit over 15 years.
You've got a couple years on me, but not too much.
Not too much. Well, then I'm going to be super curious, like what you were doing before that. So let's take a look at, where did you grow up and all?
I grew up in Ormond Beach, and I moved to Port Orange, kind of Central Florida on the East Coast.
Okay. All right. And you still have family in that area?
I don't. Well, my grandpa lives there. My parents live over on the West Coast of Florida.
Oh, okay. Two different experiences, East and West Florida, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I'm happy to be back on the East Coast.
You like the East better?
I do. In Okeechobee out here at the ranch, we can't ask for anything more.
That's your vibe, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Your parents like the West Coast, though?
They like where they're at. They're out of town. They have a nice little piece of property, so they're happy where they are.
Yeah. My daughter lives in St. Pete, and she loves it. She was born and raised up here in Fernandina, Amelia Island, which is East Coast Florida. And but that blue water and that white sandy beach and more of that tropical feel is what you get over there, right?
Right.
Yeah. Where you get a little bit more of like the marshes and swampland and that experience on the east side.
I love the cypress trees, the swamps, the woods out here. It's special.
I did notice this year in particular the cypress trees at Jack Links. I don't know why I hadn't noticed them before, but there are areas where I was like surprised to even see them, I thought. Yeah. All right. So what did you think you were going to do when you grew up?
I never had any idea. I started college for engineering and went to computer science kind of thing and realized that I hated all that, and figured out that there wasn't a degree that college offered that had anything to do with anything I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to be outside. That's about all I knew. And, at that point I found shooting and kind of pivoted away from everything and went, dove pretty much head on with my brother and I into shooting.
And what kind of shooting was that at that point?
Sporting clays.
Okay.
We'd been around guns and shooting, going to the rifle range with our dad and that kind of thing, and a little bit of hunting most of our lives. But once we started in sporting clays, we pretty much left everything else behind and we're all in.
And now where were you at that point? Still in Florida?
In Florida briefly, up near New Smyrna Beach. I used to shoot at a little county range there for about a year. And then we moved to Idaho, actually. So we lived in Idaho for about 3 years. And that's where I met my wife.
Okay. Okay. And did you do clay shooting up that way?
I did. Yeah. We lived in Boise and there was one little club there at the time. And so we had to drive about 2 hours to get to a really good club.
Okay.
And I would drive 2 hours each way about 3 times a week to go shoot.
No, you didn't. Holy.
It was great. It was a little county, not for profit place in Burley, Idaho, run by a bunch of farmers that did it because they loved it.
Yeah. Okay, so
Great.
you really did love it. All right, folks, we'll be right back after a sponsored segment. Are you missing clays and wondering why? ShotCam can help. It's a lightweight camera that attaches under your barrel to record every shot, with a red dot showing where your barrel was pointed at the moment of truth. Just turn it on, it automatically saves everything. Instantly replay the videos on your phone, and they are clear enough to even see the pellets. I've used ShotCam frequently at my shotgun club. Not only has it been used in instruction time, but as a little different twist, I use it for making my social media content because there's nothing like seeing that target break in the air and having a really great camera that does that. Super excited to have them on board here. Get your ShotCam at shotcam.com with the code TheClayLab. That's just one word and you get 10% off. So the average shooter improves 10% in their first 30 days of using the camera. So that ShotCam, spelled S-H-O-T, then K-A-M. So spell it with a K. Yeah, that's a lot of, 3 times a week. And good time with your brother, I'm sure, also.
Oh, yeah. No, it was great.
Yeah. So you met your wife there. How did you guys meet? Like, was she out there shooting or what?
No, I actually met her at, this sounds funny, people don't believe me, but I met her at Whole Foods. So I picked her up at the grocery store.
Well, I believe you. She looks very health conscious.
Oh, yeah.
But so you were also health conscious when you guys met. And
Well, it sounds like that, but in Boise, there was actually a room upstairs that overlooked the mountains that had a bar. So you got, that's where we were.
I love it. All right. So you weren't really shopping for the Whole Foods. You were going up to the bar and she was in the Whole Foods.
Right.
That's a great place to meet a healthy, great woman there for sure. That was good strategic move. Nice. So then what happens? How did you end up in Texas?
So I moved back to Florida for about 2 years after that. And, Clancy got pregnant and I was trying to look at, what the heck am I going to do with my life? It's a lot harder to travel and shoot and everything and make a living when you're, have a kid on the way. So then I found a job at Rock. Actually. It was my first time kind of dabbling into even considering I was going to work in this industry. It was really an entry-level position just to figure out if I liked it, if I'd be good at it. I spent a year there. I'm in Lakeland. And then Kevin Doherty called me one day from Greater Houston and said, hey, I got a few people dropped your name and, would you be interested in coming out and interviewing to come out here and work with us there?
Nice.
And I think like 7 days later, I was moving in. It all happened very fast.
Wow. Well, good for you guys. Knowing what's right for you. I mean, that's speaking of like mental stuff, right? Like knowing like this feels right and let's dive in and let's do it. Like, is it easy for you to do things like that? Make decisions, I would say kind of based on your gut feeling or something?
I'd say so. And Clancy and I have always been pretty aligned with that. I think her and I can usually know right off the bat if something's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And we've been willing to dive in head first and go.
Would you say that that's a skill that you've developed, or would you say you've just always been like that?
I think I've always been like that, but I think I've experienced success because of that. So it's been, reinforced throughout my life.
Yeah.
You start to follow your gut and you see it working and keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a thing. It's like, it's kind of a goofy way of explaining it, but I feel like you have like a little devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, and the angel's like giving you gentle nudges in the right direction, and it feels right. And it's kind of like, and it's not obnoxious and it's not going to be the squeaky wheel, where the fear that we typically have that can hinder us from making decisions, that's the more loud, obnoxious voice, and have you noticed that you have the kind of like two voices in your head, one that is more fearful and one that's a little bit more like that feels good and feels right and we should probably do this?
I think so. And usually when I'm experiencing that, I go talk to Clancy and she says, no, Mike, don't be stupid. Go do it.
Nice. Well, and she's been practicing yoga and all that stuff for a while, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
For most of our marriage. Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. For most of our marriage, she has, and probably even before that.
Does she meditate and all as well?
Not lately, but yes.
And how about you?
I only really ever have probably 10 or 12 years ago. You don't know this, but actually I pulled up some of your videos and did some of your guided meditations.
No, you didn't.
Sure did. Yeah.
I love that. Nice. Well, and the reason I asked that question is because that's one of the ways to kind of build that skill, and learn to turn off thoughts, especially thoughts that are going to hinder you in some way or don't feel right or are just like fear based.
Right.
But yeah, it seems to me, just again, observing, because I observe and talk to a lot of different people, that you both seem pretty grounded, and you both have that ability to see the good in situations, but also I would imagine at this point, especially in both of your lives, that you're able to trust that inner, that good feeling, that gentle nudge, and it feels right and it feels good, and you're like, let's go for it.
Right. And then, I think having the confidence to know, regardless of what happens, that you trust yourself to execute. You know,
Yeah.
her and I are very supportive of each other. And, at the end of the day, regardless of what situation we get in, we're going to
Yeah.
execute to the best of our ability and we're going to go.
Nice, nice. I definitely have seen that in both of you also. Like go-getters, like gonna get stuff done. Yeah, with a smile on your face.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. So, all right, so we're in Texas, and how's that for you at that time in your life?
Texas was great to us. We absolutely loved our time there. We were there for about 6 years. We lived on site there in Greater Houston. It's something that, we love where we are and we're very happy where we are, but we were very sad to leave. There's a lot of wonderful people.
Yeah, for sure.
That club, Kevin, all the members, it was a great spot for us for sure.
How did you like that weather and that I was gonna say environment, but just, that weather and all that compared to your love of Eastern Florida?
The rainy season was kind of inverse from what it is here. So here in the summer, you get nice rain patterns that cools the place off. And then throughout the
Yeah.
winter, when it's cooler, it's kind of dry and nice. Houston was the opposite. All summer long, you just look around the property and watch all your trees dying, and it's just hot and dry. And then in the wintertime, when you wish it was dry, then, it's just raining and muggy and gray every
Oh,
day.
okay. I hadn't realized that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind the weather pattern here.
Okay.
Temperature-wise, it's the same, but the water controls a lot.
And while you're in Texas, you pop out one more child, right? You have two.
Yep, we had two.
Yeah.
My son Whitman was actually born since he did a home birth in the house there.
Nice.
His birth certificate actually says the address of that gun club.
Wow, that's cool. I did a home birth also with my second child. Yeah, it's quite the endeavor to take on, but well worth it. Well
Right.
worth it for a woman to do that. And I'm sure for a man, that's going to be a totally different experience for a man as well. Yeah, it's an awesome thing to do. But yeah, that's cool. So yeah, that really was home, right? You had some good
Yeah.
things going on there. And I love that you guys have been able to live on property and raise your children in such places.
Oh, that's such a benefit. It's incredible having your kids in that situation. And then being that close to work really allows you to be kind of married to your job, but in a positive way. Where,
Okay.
like when we're running tournaments, I'll work till 9 o'clock at night sometimes or later, just checking everything and going through. And so that lets me, instead of being absent, I can go get my kids and have them hop on the side by side with me.
For sure.
No, I would not trade that for anything in the world.
Yeah, I agree. Joe owned his shotgun club in South New Jersey for 30 years, and he lived on property for the last like 3 maybe of that, and or 4 or 5. And so I watched that, like getting up at 6 a.m., maybe having some coffee, but then heading right out and taking care of some things. And it was just right there, right? So if he wanted to plow down a tree or make a new course or grade the road coming in or, fix some machines, it was just all right there. They could come back in, have his lunch or whatever. And it was pretty neat. It started, and I wonder if you felt like this. I'm like, Joe, it's like you have a playground that a bunch of your friends come and visit, and then they all leave at 3:30, and then you have that playground.
No, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Houston too, some of the days where, we were always open pretty much, but then, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter were the 3 days that we were closed. And I tell you, the whole place is silent, the gate's locked, and it's just,
I bet you loved that also.
no, it was great.
Yeah. That
And
just sounds amazing.
And now here at Quail Creek, the place is so big.
Yeah.
And we live kind of on the isolated section of the property. So we, really always have that feeling. You
Yeah.
can always get on the side by side and go escape.
Yeah, because it's only the bigger events where people park over in that general area too, right? You don't really have that all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It became like after 3:30, it felt like a nature preserve. It was like all the animals and the deers would come out, would go for walks and just sit outside and let the dogs run free, and yeah, it was pretty great as far as that living on property. I admire that for you guys, especially for your children. I think that's really a great way for them to grow up and all.
It's special for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that was Texas. And then what happens?
Well, so back in January, February, somebody texted me and said, "Hey, I think a job opened at Quail Creek." And I had a couple of years before. I hope Kevin's not listening and hears me say this, but a couple of years before, when Troy Link bought the property, I told Clancy, "Man, that's going to be the place to be. That's the job to have. That's the place to be." And so I kind of loosely maybe was manifesting
But
that.
I was going to say, do you believe in manifesting?
Yeah, no, I was putting it out there. And again, I was very happy with where I was the whole time. But
For sure.
I had been to Quail Creek a lot, growing up here in Florida. I knew how special this place was. I don't think I realized quite how special it was until I got here. But anyway, I reached out to them, wrote them a nice letter, and I called them and interviewed for quite a while. I was interviewing until June from them.
Wow. Yeah. That is a while.
Quite the process to go through, but here we are.
Wow. Well, the fact that you love Eastern Florida, I mean, because that's not for everybody, right? So for you to be up there in Texas and to be like, wow, that would be a great job for somebody, right? I mean, for you. Yeah, no. So we mentioned manifesting. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that if you want something bad enough and it's for you, and I think if you put it out there, I think that a lot of things fall into place to conspire to bring it to you.
Yeah. You've seen evidence of that a lot in your life. Yeah, me too. And just to kind of break it down as easily as possible, what manifesting is, it goes along with the power of positive thinking, which I think both of those, for some people, they think it's foo-foo or they don't believe in it, or I've tried positive thinking, but it didn't work for me. There's a bit under the surface that needs to be done as well. But for somebody who practices being a kind of pure of thought, meaning not a lot of cruddy thoughts, trusting, having good instincts and trusting those instincts, then there's a purer mind, meaning the opposite is worrying and doubting and fearing and regretting and just swirling around with those kinds of thoughts. So to be able to clear that stuff out and then start using the mind like the powerful tool that it is kind of taking things to the next level. And so what that means is, like, I've been a fan of Corvettes for a long time. So because of that, even sports cars in general, like, I could be going down, 80 miles an hour, having a conversation about dinner, and my subconscious mind will see a Corvette going 85 down the other side of the road. I'm not thinking about Corvette. I'm not looking for a Corvette. I'm totally engrossed in this conversation related to dinner, but my subconscious has basically been programmed that it likes these things, right? So it will see those things. Right. And so what happens with first positive thinking, you have to first okay, well, what do I like? What do I like? And let me think about those things on purpose, because my brain's going to do this anyways. Like, it's going to see the things that I'm thinking about or that I believe in, or, if I believe I can never break rabbits, or I'm horrible on the first stations, or I'm horrible on the last stations, then you will actually go into it expecting that and then likely create it and see evidence of why it's true for you. No different than the subconscious mind seeing that Corvette even when I'm not looking for it. So if I kind of create in my brain, I'll never make it to national, I'll never make it to master class, I'll never break 90, then you will actually continue to find evidence for that. That's what your subconscious will then find proof of all around you. So the way to work around that is to decide what you do want to experience. And then you'll start seeing proof of that all around you. And it could be as simple as standing in Starbucks line and the person in front of you is talking about the one thing that you were just wondering about. Or I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, and here I am standing next to someone who just came from Hawaii and can tell me exactly what I should do and how to get there, that
Right.
kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. And really, just to add to that, when I was at Tenor a couple months in, and, it was a very entry-level job. I wasn't making any money. I was getting pretty frustrated for a lot of reasons. And Clancy told me one day, she stopped me dead and said, "Hey, look, you need to operate at this job as if you're already in the job that you want to be in. You have something in your mind that you want to do." And, at Tenor we weren't throwing NSCA shoots. It wasn't very busy. I wanted more.
Right.
And so she said, "Look, operate there in the way as if you were already in the job that you want to be in." And I embodied that. And I also took a little notepad and I wrote down the job that I wanted and the exact salary that I wanted. And I carried that in my pocket for about 4 months. And when Kevin hired me, he hired me at the exact dollar amount that I had written down in my pocket.
Come on.
Now, looking back, I'm like, I should have wrote more, but
Right.
there we go.
I love that. And that's really how it works. And
Right.
you have to be open. Like I said, you can't have the kind of brain that's worrying and doubting and fearing and like living in angst and anxiety. Like ideally, that's the first stuff to figure out how to get rid of, and then you have this mind where you can write something down and have faith. Like you don't have to work hard at it. Again, this goes because this applies to everything. So I'm going to tie it back to shooting. It's like going into a stand. You don't have to force yourself to break those targets. If you try too hard, if you try to replicate, if you try to duplicate, if you become too careful, like all that like tiptoeing around the target is the same as the opposite of what you just said. Like writing down a number, having clarity about who you are and what you want for your work, and then just putting it in your pocket and kind of going about life and trusting, hey, at some point, I think this could happen. I don't really know how, when, or where, but I'm just going to roll with it, right?
Right.
Or would you say you did more than that? Like, did you do any visualizations around it or thoughts around it, or you just kind of carried it around?
There were some visualizations for sure.
Okay.
It's hard to do because you're not visualizing something that's totally concrete. But
Yes.
I used to have dreams about it, that I was there, at big award ceremonies, handing out trophies and all of that.
Nice job. I love that. Now, did you kind of figure that out on your own?
A little bit. I read a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are.
Yes, I know that. Yeah.
You know it. And then I think, it ties back into shooting a little bit too. I remember when I lived in Idaho, there was a really awesome guy there named Kelly Hyde. He passed away a while ago, but he told me once watching me shoot, he said, Mike, you've got all the techniques and you got the fundamentals and all of it is. But what you need to do is when you pull the trigger, you need to know that target's going to break. You can't have any doubt. Whether anything's right or wrong, just know that it's going to work. It's going to break.
Yeah.
And I think that's powerful stuff, and that little bit of fear creeping in there of uncertainty. I mean, it leads to all the issues that we try to teach out of people.
Exactly. Definitely. And I would say, there's been some controversy about whether or not someone can teach you how to be in the zone. And my approach to that is you have to eliminate all of these things that keep you out of the zone. Like every human absolutely can go in the zone. It's the alpha state. You pass through it when you fall asleep. You pass through it when you wake up. You pass into it. Like if you're doing meditation or hypnosis, like there's no doubt a person can go into the zone state. The thing is that we keep ourselves out of it, again, with the same exact things like worry and doubt and fear and trying too hard and overthinking and overanalyzing and all that stuff. So it is like the elimination of those things is my whole course is how to get out of that and focus your mind in the right way. I love that you did visualizations as well. But again, the way you're explaining it, though, it seems like, again, you weren't like trying hard, like I have to have this and I'm going to visualize it. I'm going to make it happen. Right. It seems like it was a little looser than that.
Yeah. I think you're really just, try to be the person that you would be in that position, whether it's in your shooting or anything. And then I think continue to put it out there that you're ready for it.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah. One of the tricks is to be excited about it. This and anticipate it in the way, like if you're excited about a specific vacation you're going on, like Joe and I going to Italy in April, it's like that's happening, right? I mean, unless there's some kind of storm or something weird. Other than that, this is a trip that to be excited about. And that's the same way, ideally, to feel about something that you would like to experience, whether it's a particular type of job, a certain income level, certain kind of position, like certain number of targets that you want to break at a tournament. I know a top shooter has never won at nationals, and if he goes around thinking I'll never win at nationals, then he's creating that experience over and over again and probably then going in extremely anxious and really trying too hard. So, like the fix for that person is to see it, right? Believe it and believe it's going to happen and anticipate it in some way. But it's tricky because the ego mind wants to also then flip it into like trying to make it happen and forcing. And then let's say that person went in and he immediately missed a target or two on the first station. His brain can go crazy with, oh, not winning this time. just like every other year, going to be just like that. Right.
I'll never forget in Houston, we have the Diamond Classic every year at the end of the year. We combined it with a regional a couple of years in a row. Joe Finizzi won 3 years in a row there, which was a big thing to do at that shoot. And I'll never forget the first time he won, he came in and we had these big flags that we lined the entrance with that had all the past winners. It's been 18, 20 years of these flags with everyone who's won. And he told me, he said, Mike, I came in this morning, first day in, and I saw those flags. And I sat there at the gate for about 15 minutes and just visualized a flag there with my name on it.
Nice.
And you know what? He couldn't be touched. He took it all. I think it's positive stuff. You look at it, visualize what that looks like for you, and then trust it to happen. And in shooting, if you combine that with great fundamentals, great technique, I think a lot of people can do it a little bit, but the killer is when you walk up to a station and you don't know how to handle that bird.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden your whole program's done. So you have to have the techniques to fall back on. You need to know that you have some semblance of a plan, for each station.
Right.
And if you combine that with some powerful thought, you're probably going to shoot pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because most people recognize also that when they are having that peak performance moment or moments or experience, it doesn't even feel like it's them pulling the trigger. Like their conscious mind is actually seemingly blank, right? It's just, they're totally there. And it's a euphoric feeling. It feels amazing. And it's them in that target. And they're smoking them. And it's almost an out of body experience.
Right.
Because we're so used to being in that analytical mind. And most people are also used to being in that fear-based mind. Like, again, the worry and the doubt and the trying too hard and over-analyzing and all that. Yeah, so I love that you have a lot of personal experience with trusting and letting go, but also having clarity and visualizations and positive thoughts about where you'd like to go. Another thing I want to point out to people is, and when you go back to that first job you had, it's never that things are bad. It's that this experience is teaching me what I prefer. Now I can still be happy while I'm here and enjoy this, but at the same time, I'm ready to evolve to something else. It's teaching me, I like this, I like this, I like this. I don't particularly like this, but instead of being upset about it, which again, a lot of people would do, is to take that, what I don't particularly care about it and flip it into what I would prefer. And then you've got one more thing added. I like being outside. I love being at this shotgun club. Well, it doesn't do NSCA events. I'd really like to do NSCA events. Okay, so now I like being outside. I really like being at a shotgun club. And I'd love to be at a bigger club that does NSCA events. And then that's how you get that clarity. And then you can have the positive thoughts around it. And then you can do the visualizations around it. And then you can just experience these serendipitous moments in life as things start coming together.
Right. And it seems like those moments happen, more and more often.
Yes,
there you
they
are.
do.
And it gets to the point where it feels like it's not a coincidence.
It's amazing. And then what happens is the more that you recognize, wait a minute, I think that had something to do with I wrote down that same exact dollar amount and carried it around in my pocket. And I did visualization. The more that you kind of honor that this is just how it all works, you'll start seeing it more and more because it's trusting that this power of your mind that you truly have and how the energies of everything around you respond to that. It's no different than two magnets, the way that they attract to each other and everything's energy. I think that everybody's on the same page with that at this point. And science has proven that, you look at the nucleus of a cell and it's mostly energy. So some things are at a different frequency, meaning a table versus a fluid or something, but they're still all energy. And yeah, it's powerful stuff. Well, I love that. Okay, so you go through this 6 months of interviewing and such. And so then what happens?
Well, Troy Link called me one day and the way he started the conversation, I thought he was going to tell me that he wasn't going to hire me. He told me, this is a really hard decision. We had a lot of great candidates and I was kind of preparing myself for the worst, but he said he'd love to have me here and he'd love to have me bring the ranch into the future.
Nice.
Here we are. We took a couple weeks later and I was moving in here and, learning this ranch has been a whirlwind. I'm probably just now getting a grasp for everything that we do because it's so diverse.
Yeah,
It's
I bet.
going on, but we have an incredible team here, a huge structure for support for me and for everybody else. So
nice.
Excited now to have, the majority of one season under my belt and kind of have a great grasp on everything and be able to continue to head in the right direction.
Yeah. The first year that they did the Jack Link's Cup, Joe and I had dinner with a bunch of folks, but we're sitting at the same table with Troy and Jack Link. So we,
Mhm.
got to know them and talk to them and all that. And I'll never forget it because it was such a cool moment for me related to Jack was like, we're going to make this club bigger and badder than any other that's out there. But not only that, but the NSCA events, we want to break the mold. Like we don't care what anybody else has been doing. And I don't mean that in a negative way. He's like, we're going to blow the top off it, right? Like I think he said they own car dealerships or RVs and all that. He was like, one day we'll probably give away a car, an RV. And he was like, we want to be bigger and badder. I'm fascinated with, old money, like the Vanderbilts and JP Morgan, all that's something that's really fascinating to me. I like to go to places like historic Jekyll Island and the mansions up in Newport, Rhode Island. There's something about that for me that I love watching and learning about stuff like that and about money and success. And so then, sitting there with Jack Links and listening to him and how money gives him the freedom to do whatever the heck he wants.
Right.
I think that's super cool. And I'm watching it unfold like every year. And this comes from me also owning a shotgun club. It's on 35 acres. It's really cute. Cute compared to Quail Creek. But I know what it takes as far as money and such to do improvements to my little place, to do improvements, to make sure things look good all the time. They're being repaired. They're being upkept. They're being beautified. Every time, again, you see a problem, instead of getting sucked up in the problem, it's like, what's next? Like, what needs to happen? So like last year, well, I guess 2 Jack Links ago at this point, an observation was around the dinner, right? And not enough places for people to sit and eat. Well, you guys take note of that. And it's like, we're throwing up this circus tent, which you have to add even more for next year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That tent was, it was massive. It wasn't quite big enough. And that culture, I sent a survey out after the shoot too. And I got more positive feedback from that tent than almost anything else. I love the comment that I kept getting over and over was that it felt like it brought the camaraderie back into it. Because
Yeah,
a lot of shoots, and there's rarely a couple hundred people there, for the
for
bank.
sure.
And so to get 12, 13, 1,400 people all in one place, all visiting and enjoying each other is something very special. And we're excited to continue to grow that aspect of it.
Joe and I talked about that. And there's got to be many factors to why that many people stayed for dinner, right? Like the
Right.
quality of the food, like the experience of it. Like I didn't happen to notice this year, but I know last year you guys were giving out like the guns and all that during that time, right? Did you do that again this
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was giveaways.
Yeah, yeah. So, there's like, well, it's worth it to stick around because the food's going to be amazing. There's these giveaways. They got room for us because that's definitely a thing. I'll scope it out when I'm at events and deciding whether or not I'm going to stay for that particular night's dinner. And Joe's the same way. Like, what are they serving? And is there room to sit? And is
Right.
it going to be efficient to get through the line?
Mhm.
Because I don't want to stand in line with 1,000 people and then get up to the front and then be like, oh my God, that's the fattiest piece of meat I've ever seen. Like, because then we will leave and we will go out to eat. Like, and that's happened a lot of places that we've
Yeah.
gone to.
And I think they've done a great job, setting me up with a lot of history of success in that, and so there's momentum in every category related to that dinner. And now it's just take the momentum and continue to help it grow.
And to have the interest and the means and the ability to make the changes, I think is really cool. There are things like, let's see if I'm going to be able to remember the name of it. It was the US Open in Texas that rained like crazy. And then people,
I was there.
yeah, it went down in history, right? And, some clubs, there's no doubt. I mean, I used to do clinics there and I knew the husband and wife, and they definitely wanted to do right. They definitely had good intentions. But and this is just me because I don't know. But having the ability, the means, the foresight, whatever it is, to go like, holy crap, there's going to be a swamp if we don't put gravel down or something, or even
Right.
have the money to do it.
And building that gravel and doing the roads, it's a gamble. You saw all the new courses we built for Jack Links this year, and I pitched that to Troy pretty early. And he said, "Hey, do we really need to put rock down on everything. Told him maybe not. It depends on if it rains or not. It's really insurance. It's making sure, and I use Caney Creek as an example too. You never
Yeah.
know if it's going to rain or not. Then
Well,
if it does, you want to be safe.
and multiple nationals where it rained so much that it was just mud flying everywhere. Not as bad as Caney Creek as far as people getting stuck, but I've seen it pretty close.
Right.
And then,
This year at Nationals was pretty wet.
yeah, and they come in and they, put all that concrete down in front of the vendors and, millions of dollars later. But,
Right.
and that's the thing that can be, whether it's a club or in somebody's own personal life. It's like, okay, here, let me be aware of what's working and what's not working. And instead of getting down on myself and beating myself up for what's not working, it's like, let me learn from this and let me start taking action in the direction of the improvement and be happy along the way. Like, don't sit there and tear yourself up because then you're in worry and doubt and fear and anger and all that other crud thinking.
Right. And I think for me, from a club manager's perspective too, I always try to put every action into context of how is this going to make our guests feel.
Yeah.
And you always want to shoot for whatever is going to make them feel cared for, make them feel like you had the forethought to take care of them and kind of preemptively fix a lot of these issues. And then if you do that constantly, then the result's going to be that you run a heck of a shoot and people are happy and they come back. And we're very blessed to have the ownership that with Troy and Jack, where we can pitch these ideas and state our case, and they'll say, okay, execute, go do it.
Yeah, and there's something to that whole curb appeal and maybe feng shui or whatever. Like, again, it's energy, but not necessarily consciously recognized unless you're looking for it. But I don't know if there was new fence put out there, but I noticed, and I don't remember, they're not sago palms, but that kind of more brush palm, that low growing and it's wild. What is that called?
This is palmettos.
Palmettos.
Yeah.
I noticed palmettos were trimmed every direction that I looked. And I was like, golly, they got the palmettos trimmed back. These fences, whether they're new or not, they look pretty new and they're well taken care of. The details.
A lot of that, I got to give credit. Abraham is my facilities manager here. He's an absolute stud. He's the unsung hero. He gets all the credit for that. He just came to me and said, hey, Mike, we got to do this. And the next day it was done.
Now this is something I've noticed for a long time, but the ladies' restroom, there's like everything a woman could need, for body odor to like hairspray and I actually had gone home and mimicked that at my shotgun club, made sure there are all these, and it was nicely presented, all this stuff. But beyond that, this particular year, I noticed that the bathrooms were just spotless clean and smelt good. And it looked like somebody had just walked out from cleaning it. Like every time I went in, like amazing.
Oh, I love that. That's great feedback.
Yeah. No, it just truly felt like everywhere I turned, there was something else that was impressing me, from the small details all the way up. It was really cool.
Yeah. Well, we had a great team. We had a lot of awesome people out here working.
Yeah. I definitely saw that too. Eating lunch or something like that. The staff, there was a great number of staff, but they were all working hard. You could recognize them in their shirts and they were all doing something and getting it done. And it's extremely impressive. And so many of those things, again, not everybody notices all the details, but it creates a feeling, and that feeling can be a draw as well.
Right. No, absolutely. You want that feeling of, here's this group of people and they're working hard for us to feel taken care of. People, this is an entertainment business. People spend their leisure money here, the recreation money, which I think people are probably the most protective of. I don't get very many times to go do something for fun, other than work. I'm having fun all the time out here. But if I'm going to go spend some money to do a vacation or, go do an activity that I love, I'm going to be more protective about that money than just about anything else.
Right.
So we try to approach everything with that in mind and make sure we're doing right by them, because it's not cheap, to come fly across the country and shoot the Jack Link's cut. It's an investment. It's a lot of money.
Right. For sure. Yeah. So when you first arrived, did you have some ideas that were, Michael's, like what I'd like to do to this place or what I'd like to experience? Did you bring some of your own stuff?
Some of them, but I say a lot of it wasn't right. I think there's some ideas that I'm glad I didn't act on, because, we had a totally different demographic in Houston with, being a private club and the oil and gas industry and all the events. And this is a totally different group here. I thought that, I thought all kinds of things, and I'm glad that I was able to kind of sit back and observe for a while before I did.
Okay.
But, the biggest thing that think was already being done here. I'm just hoping to, enable the team to take it further is the hospitality. We want people to come here and feel like there's nothing that was an afterthought. Like everything here was, preemptively done. And like, I want them to come and feel like there's no better experience anywhere else.
Nice. Nice. Besides the Jackling's Cup, you guys have a pretty steady stream of corporate events that come in?
We do. Yeah, we do a fair amount of fundraisers and corporate events. Our daily business is good. We have a lot of people coming out here to shoot and have a great time.
Yeah, because I find that interesting also. It's something that Joe and I have talked about, again, both being club owners, is you don't have a major city around you.
Right.
People are being bussed in for these events
Yeah, quite a bit.
they got 45-minute hour drive to come do a
You know,
corporate.
that hurts us and it also helps us because, yeah, we're further out, but I think it makes it a lot more special of a day for them.
It's more of an excursion, an outing.
An experience, more of an outing. You have people that don't really live out in areas like this coming out to a very special place, out in South Florida. And so I think it hurts us a little because we don't have the volume. In Houston, we were doing 120 something of these shoots a year, but the experience when they come out here is very special.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see it being a catch-22 as far as that's concerned. Yeah. But again, what you create there for the atmosphere and the experience brings them back. I'm sure that the ones that come are booking for the next year.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an area that I'm working on for my shotgun club. And I do have Jacksonville close by, but I also have the Ritz-Carlton and an Omni Plantation. So there are corporate events that come into the area like 15, 20 minutes away. It's just really trying to build up, the knowing and getting the word out. And there's tons of growth around us also up here.
Right. And, I think those are something they're very dear to me because obviously they're great for the club. We do well on our charity events, but there's so much money generated for these charities through the ranch. It's very special. You're really able to help, a lot of people that way.
For sure.
We'll take all we can get and, get people in here and show them a great time and help them raise some money for a lot of great causes.
Nice. I'm with you on that for sure. Yeah. Okay. So you're at Quail Creek. You have these great opportunities there. You're watching the growth. You've had, is it 4 or 5 Jackling's Cups now?
So it started in 22. So there's 22, 23, 24, 25. So we've had 4. We're getting ready for 6th.
Okay. And I guess going back to the theme of this call, there are great things. There are things that could be improved on, and we learn from that, and then we go, well, let's do it. Let's implement that change. Okay, so what things are great, and what things are you guys improving on?
There's so many things that we can improve. I could list off about 1,000. We've had a lot of meetings internally. Working on communication through our team here and how we can set up the team here first off to, get a little less wore out. Everybody worked, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks straight getting ready for that. So I'd like to do my job as a manager really and set these guys up for more success, give them more time off, stagger start and stop times.
Yeah.
Which I think will give them a lot more energy to give back, to our guests that are there.
Good point.
Then, we got to continue to grow it. I put events on the registration for next year where I don't even have course space for them yet. So I got courses to build. We have a lot of projects, a lot of things to do. Adding 200 or 300 people, it changes the complexion of the whole thing.
Michael, you had said to Joe and I that you're only going to add a few hundred, but you guys added how many more already?
So this year we had 1,352 total entrants. We're at 1,707, I think, as of this morning.
That's more than a few hundred.
More than a few hundred. It filled up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are excited. I think that's all the proof that my team needed too. I loved opening registration very quick because, and it's something that I didn't realize would happen, but the whole team here is still feeling kind of raw from, the weeks before.
Yeah.
Man, they saw that thing open up and this place was just buzzing. They were so excited and they all felt, it
was a pat on the back, I imagine. It was
a great pat on the back. It's like, okay, yeah, all right. We did do a good job.
Yeah, because tell everybody, in case they don't know, which I'm sure everybody knows, but yeah, you open it up and then what happens?
Yeah, I think 4 hours in, we were at 1,000 shooters.
Yeah, I saw people talking about it on social media and they're telling, I'm number such and such and it's only been open an hour. Like, can you believe it? And then everybody was like trying to get the lowest number and it became kind of the social media thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to open in the evening. I was thinking like 8 o'clock. That way all the East Coast guys, everybody would be off work. And Casey Chase called me and she said, Mike, you don't realize how much work this is on our end just to keep up with the volume, in that first few hours. They said, we can't do it.
Wow. But they did it.
I listened to her. And so we opened up at noon. I said, all right. She said the whole team would be up working over the night.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I had no idea either. I thought it was all automated, but wow.
Yeah, there's a lot where I think, with squatting and things where you can get double bookings sometimes when you have that many people booking that at once.
For sure. Yeah.
And I didn't realize either, but
yeah.
But I conceded. We opened at noon and it was fantastic. So
yeah. Well, I know one of the changes that you're making is related to women's veterans class. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, so that's something that I had never even really thought about, but somebody mentioned it to me over this, during Jack Link's Cup. Hey, why don't you guys do a women's veterans class? And so, it was a pretty easy decision for us. I talked to a few people about it. Everyone said, heck yeah, let's do it. And so, we increased payouts 50,000 and we're looking at how do we spread it all out. And so first thing we did is we add women's vet at the same dollar amount as all the other concurrents on every event. And then everything else we just put back into the main event.
Isabel came up to me at my vendor booth and started talking to me about, how she'd like to see that more at events and on and on and on. I'm like, Isabel, I'm telling you, you need to let them know, like let Michael know, let somebody know, because they are wanting that feedback and they could absolutely do that. Like, she's like, I don't know, and I'm like, no, I am telling you. And I kept saying that to her. And she's like, well, if I run into somebody, and I was packing up for the day, I load up my backpack and everything. I'm walking to my car and I see Alex and I'm like, Alex, will you come talk to Isabel? And he was like, sure. Like, what? I'm like, she wants to talk to somebody here about this veteran ladies class. And so he did. And I've met Alex, and he obviously seems to be an amazing guy as well. I met him every year that we've been there. But to be honest, I really thought he'd probably listen. He was really great with her, like hearing her and asking her questions and even getting to know her beyond what she was requesting. I was like, golly, he's like great at customer service and great personal skills. I was literally impressed with how this conversation went. And he took note and he was like, okay. And then him and I walked away and he started talking to me about my mental training and all that. And I thought, he'll probably take note and maybe he'll come up at a meeting. I saw you the next day. I bring it up to you and you're like, ready to talk to him about it. Somebody else talked to me as well. We're on it. And I was like, now that is awesome because.
And for Alex, that was an easy one. He came straight over to me and said, hey, this seems like a great idea. What do you think? And it took all of 15 seconds for us to decide, let's do it.
He was so he was just in that conversation. Like I said, he was like, where are you from? And just getting to know her, I felt like he took it so lightly, and not that he wouldn't do it, just that I thought, well, he'll probably take note and it'll come up in a meeting, but no. So even that was impressive to me.
Well, yeah, I think, from Alex's perspective and then, from my perspective too, I've identified a whole demographic of people who now you can make feel heard and seen.
Right.
That's it. You can make a whole group of people. It's, I don't know how many lady vet shooters we have. It's not a couple, it's a few.
Right. Right.
And so you have an opportunity then to make them all feel like you care about them and like you value them being there. And
absolutely.
That's easy. I love feedback like that. Those are things that we will always act on if we can.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's the warm, fuzzy stuff that makes it people come back, and then it keeps growing because feeling heard and seen is not common, right?
Right. Yeah. I had a guy actually when I was interviewing for this job that I talked to in Houston who runs a very, very successful hotel and country club over there. And he asked me the difference between service and hospitality. And I didn't really know what to say. I had probably some smart explanation for what. And he said, no, Mike, he said, service is, what you do. That's kind of the playbook. But hospitality is how you make people feel. And I thought, I like that a lot. And so I'm trying to embody that. And again, that's the same thing as you look at that. Okay, well, how is this going to make people feel?
Nice.
And then the answer is it's going to make them feel warm and fuzzy and make them feel great. And we can execute on it. We're going to do it.
Nice. What a great attitude and awareness, right? Again, just for you personally and in your own life and your work relationships and what the success of what you're doing there at the club, like all of that's going to benefit from having that kind of mindset. We are talking about how it feels, and we've said that a few different ways throughout this chat. And it's reminding me of how a lot of top shooters as instructors will tell people it's in the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're taking that shot, it feels a certain way. And it's got people chasing the feeling, but it doesn't break down how to get there. And for all the listeners, it's everything that we're talking about. You're not going to have that feeling, that vibe, that like connected with the target peak performance moment zone thing if you're worrying, doubting, regretting, angry, replaying misses, worried about your score. Like you have to eliminate all that stuff to be able to. Can you imagine if you're and Alex's conversation was more like, well, I don't think that's a great idea because this, and this could happen. And well, nobody else is doing it. So why should we do it? There's all different ways that conversation could have went. But it applies to everything. Again, going back to kind of the angel and the devil, that little angel, like every nudge is going to have a good feeling to it. It feels right and it can help and guide you down the path in the direction that you're wanting to go, including breaking targets in a station or having a certain kind of school.
Right. Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you could pass on one tidbit of advice or wisdom to everybody, what would you pass on?
I think I've gotten to where I am probably for a couple of reasons. The most important one of all is I chose my wife really well. I was very, very lucky.
Nice.
But I think, in work and shooting and whatever you do, don't let anybody outwork you. Just work and work and work, because there's a lot of things you can't control. You can't control how talented you are or how smart you are or a lot of things, but you can control how hard you work. And if that means getting up at 3 a.m. every day and, getting to it, then do it.
Yeah.
And then I think, this is a small sport, it's a small community like many are. And I think approaching every action, again, just like we've talked about a lot, with the idea of how is this going to make that person feel?
Yeah.
That's something I think about a lot in my management here. And I can't say I'm perfect at it yet. I'm learning a lot every day with my team, but I try to treat the team here with that same mentality, because I think that if I want them to obsess over how our guests here feel and how our customers feel, I have to obsess over how they feel.
Yeah.
If their cup's empty, if I'm draining them and their cup's empty, they don't have it to give.
Right. So important. Very powerful stuff there too. And kind of the domino effect that you're seeing in that, is pretty great. Well, dang. You're the perfect guy for the job at one of the best clubs in the country, if not the best. I don't know. It's been one of my favorites for a long time.
There's a lot of great clubs. I think one of the coolest things about this sport is how many great clubs, great families that run clubs throughout the country, how different they are.
Yeah.
I don't make it out to shoot very much these days, but I'm going to try to hit a couple because I miss some of these spots and some of the people there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
We have a very special spot here, and I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, well, they're lucky to have you as well. That's for sure. I do want to tell listeners that they can get free goodies and opt in if they opt in at dongrant.com/free. And that's like free access to some of my mental training and my online course for clay shooters and even my Mind Mastered app. And definitely come by my shotgun club, Amelia Shotgun Sports, which is up in Northeast Florida, just north of Jacksonville. You can get a free golf cart or push cart rental at the dongrant.com/free. And be sure to follow me and my shotgun club on all the social media. And I'd love to hopefully, do a clinic down there at some point. I've done them there before. And I think especially with you and your wife understanding the whole mental stuff, I think it would be great to be able to start educating and exposing other people to it as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, call me anytime. We'll set it up.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so how can people either contact you or the club? What's the information that you'd want to get out there?
I think just continue to come out here and come shoot and have a good time. I have a pretty open door policy. Anybody who wants to come and call me or email me or just come and ask for Mike. I'd love to hear from our shooters, from our guests, our customers, and everybody else.
The club, it's got a website. Everything's on Score Chaser as far as registering and social media, right? You guys have a great staff for that as well.
Yep, we have everything.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks again, Michael. It was really great getting to know you better and all, and I appreciate you being here. And I look forward to either seeing you next year at Jack Links or before that.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it, and thank you so much for having me on.
For sure.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Don Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dongrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Don wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.